Okay, so in last night's class, I had showed you what was possible in Lightroom. You can see the side-by-side comparison of Lindsay's picture here. And I have enhanced the iris of her eye. I whitened her eyes and kind of took care of any road maps in there. And took care of that hair on her forehead and coming down her face. Kind of just retouched a few little spots and minimized the appearance of any darkness under her eyes. Just minimized it. I didn't take it right away because it wouldn't have looked like her anymore. And then softened the skin. So I am going to show you how to do that. There were a few things back in the library module that I realized in our class last night that I had missed telling you about, or at least we just ran out of time. So I'm going to go over those things now. Um, You'll always want to rotate images within your library module. So very, very simple thing to do. All you need to do is select, well, I'm going to show you a few different ways to do it. First of all, you can just select the one image. And if you scroll, not scroll, but hover over the bottom left-hand or right-hand corner of the image, you'll see little bent arrows. So all you need to do is click on the arrow and it rotates the image for you. Now, if you want to do many at a time, you can select those images in a couple of different ways. First of all, you can select multiple images in a row by selecting the one and then going to the last one and holding Shift and click, and it will highlight everything in between. Now, if you need to deselect for any reason, you can just hover over the outside of the image. We've covered this before, so I'm going to make this very quick. And just click outside the image, not the thumbnail, but the image. Otherwise, it would just keep them all highlighted and make the photo active that you click on. And you can tell that that photo is active because of the lighter gray than the rest of them outside of the image. So the other way that you can select multiple images is to click on one and hold down Control and click on the other images that you want to select. It doesn't select everything in succession, it just selects the ones you click on. So I'm going to just go back to the first image, click, and go to the last image and hold Shift and click that. And then go to one of the images with the arrow in the bottom corner and click it, and it rotates them all at the same time. So I have some other ones here that I need to rotate. And yep, that's highlighted, and then we will hit the arrow and rotate them all at the same time. Okay, so that's that. Now we're going to go into the develop module, and I'm going to take my side-by-side preview off, and I'm going to fit the image by using the aspect ratios in the navigator window. We have a few different ones here that you can use. There's fit, fill, 1:1, 2:1, or you can choose any other ratio that you want to view the image at. So for now, we're just going to hit fit so we can see the entire image on the screen. And the first thing that we had done is adjusted white balance in images where the white balance was all different. So I started with the first image that had a gray card in it, and it has all these squares on here, and I mentioned that white balancing in Lightroom is much easier on gray than white. I think it just works better. Don't know why, just seems to. So in order to white balance this particular image, I'm just going to go over to my basic panel in the develop module, click on the eyedropper, and click on the gray square. And perfect. It has adjusted the image to the proper white balance. And what that means is that this square is now gray without color cast, which is exactly the way it's supposed to be, because that's what that card is made for. It's for, it's for white balancing, obviously. So we've done it on this image. How do we get it to the rest of the images here? We can do it in a couple of different ways. First of all, you can just copy the settings from this image by going to the bottom corner here of the screen and hitting the copy button, and you'll get the dialog box pop up where you can choose any of the adjustments that you want to actually copy from this image. We're just going to hit check none, And we want to keep the process version checked because this is the most recent version of Lightroom. And we want to check the white balance. That's all we've done to this image, but in this case, this is all we really want to copy over anyways. So just going to check the white balance and hit copy in the bottom right corner of it. And it loads it to our clipboard. Now I can choose any other image. I'll go to one that's very blue here and then just hit paste. And bingo, it now is assigned the exact same white balance as that previous image. Now the other thing I could do is I could select another image and I could hit the previous button in the bottom right corner here of the develop modules panel on the right. But what that does, and I'll show you, is it just copied exactly what I had done in this image, but didn't give me any options to copy over just what I wanted to. So that's kind of a dangerous button. But if I now go, if I wanted to do it to all of these images at once, so I'm actually just going to back up what I had done there, and then I'll back up what I had done on the other image. I'm going to select the image where I made the white balance, and then I'm just going to hold down Shift and select the last image in that row that I want to adjust. And you'll notice my previous button over here has turned into a sync button. Thank you, Steve, for pointing that out for me, because I totally thought it was something different than what it was. So anyway, if I just hit the sync button now, it brings up the dialog box. Now, keeping in mind that the image we're copying the settings from is the one that has the lightest gray around it, because that indicates that it is the active image. So I want to copy the white balance from this one to the rest of these images. So I'm going to hit synchronize, and you can watch it happen down here. Oh, bingo, they all look exactly the same. So that is an awesome trick. The other thing we did last night was to go through all of these panels over on the right hand side of the develop module. Now everyone was there last night, so I'm not going to really go through these again because they are pretty self-explanatory if you play with them here. What I'm going to do later is kind of create individual videos for each kind of procedure that you can do within Lightroom to fix or correct or alter a certain or a specific issue. So, or to address a specific issue. Fix is not the word. Anyway, and we will do that as we go along here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how each of the tools work, because that is what I really wanted to focus on here. And we're also going to create that brush preset and then the image presets over here. So first of all, I'm going to start with this image that we worked on of Lindsay last night. So I'm going to show you quickly how I would adjust this, because this is obviously way overexposed. I'm going to first of all just go to the basic panel and bring the exposure down. And the reason why I'm stopping here is because if I put my cursor over her face there in the shadow, or in the lighter area of her face, you can see by looking at the histogram in the top right corner up here, if I put my mouse over there, that it's giving me values of 86, 81, and 79 in the red, green, and blue channels. I'm kind of aiming for about an 82 average, so that's not too bad, not too far off, and I like it a little bit brighter. So really, I could bring the exposure down just a little more, and okay, I'm pretty happy with that. That's not bad. So now I'm going to start with the crop overlay tool. So I'm going to go here and just click on the tool, and it brings up the bounding box. Now what I had mentioned last night is that you always want to have this locked, regardless of whether you're using the original aspect ratio or the 1:1 or the 8:10 or any of the other settings. You want to have it locked, because if you don't and it's unlocked, it makes no difference what you set this ratio to, because you can, if I'm dragging in, I can make it square, I can make it vertical, I could make it horizontal, I could make it like, 4:10 ratio or, whatever I wanted. So there's really just no, oh, actually, if you look over beside my lock there on the right hand side, you'll see what it is up there. 4:5 and 8:10 is what that is. But then I could go and make it something else. Okay, it's just giving me custom because it's not a standard size. So there was 2:3 and 4:6. So, so what I want to do is keep the lock on and click those arrows and choose original. And what that's going to do is just keep this rectangle no matter whether I drag down or across, or, well, it will give me a 4:6 vertical or a 4:6 horizontal, but it will keep the aspect ratio locked to what the original ratio is. And I had explained in class last night that we want to keep it proportionate to our original image size because of the fact that you lose inches off the width of your images depending on what size you end up printing it at. So an 8:10 originally off your camera would have been an 8:12, so you're going to lose 2 inches. A 4:6 is the right size, so you're not losing anything. But if now you print a 5:7 from the same image, you're going to lose half an inch off of that because it's actually proportionate to a 5:7.5. So you want to keep as much of your image if you want to do a little bit of cropping in Lightroom as it is. So that you have room to work with later and you're not going to be losing things you don't want to lose later on. So if I was going to crop this to right about there, that would be perfect because it's working with the rule of thirds. You got the 2/3 here that she is occupying, and then her eyes are coming across at that 2/3 mark horizontally. So I'm going to keep that. So to commit that change, couple different ways you could do it. I think you could double click there, or I could have just clicked the crop tool again there. So that is the cropping tool. Now, if I want to do any sort of retouching on her face, let's just zoom in here and let's, I don't know, retouch that little mark there. I think it might be a dimple, but we're going to just pretend it's a blemish or something. So I'm just going to click my spot removal tool and make my circle big enough to cover it by either using the scroll wheel on my mouse or using the size indicator over here, the slider on the right hand side in the panel. Anytime you do retouching on a face, you want to keep the feather up to, well, I always keep it up to 100 because it gives you a nice soft edge and you don't see the adjustments that you make. And then the opacity, well, I'm going to start it out at 100%, and I may fade that later if I think it's too much for what I wanted to accomplish. But here, I want to get rid of that completely, so I'm going to click, and it chooses the area that it clones from, and it's taking care of it completely. So that's good. I'm going to leave it at 100%. Whereas if I wanted to, say, retouch under her eyes, this is not perfectly sharp on this image, so it kind of bugs me a little bit, but we'll leave it there. If I wanted to retouch this area, kind of a handy little tool or trick is to clone this out at 100% just by dragging across. And you can drag, which is the nicest, newest feature of Lightroom's spot removal tool. It used to be you could only retouch circles, which drove me crazy. But what it's doing here, it's showing you this is what I've retouched, and this is the area it's taken from to correct this issue. Well, you can see it only made it, well, actually it made it worse, if anything, because it took the same area under her other eye. So I can click on inside that area that it cloned from and move it over to, say, a clean area of her cheek and use that as the clone area to fix this under eye area. And if I want to, I could actually zoom out a little bit and I could take it instead and use the area on her forehead to clone it, because that actually gives me a result I like a little bit better. So again, I'm going to zoom in 1:1 here so I can see what I'm doing. And if I think it's too much, I can just go and reduce the opacity of that adjustment until I like what I've got. So sometimes what I'll do is if I think it's way too much, I'll go right down to 0 on the opacity and then bring it up until I like it and leave it there. So I'll just do that again on the other eye quickly to kind of recap. This is active right now, but as soon as I go over here and click under this eye, with the spot removal tool anyways, it automatically creates a new adjustment area, and it's independent from the one I did under her other eye. Now it's using this area over here for this under eye, which actually doesn't look too bad, but I am going to take it and move it up to the clean area of her forehead. I like that better. And we have the opacity. It kept the opacity from the other one, which I had reduced down to 48%. I'm actually going to maybe bring it up a little bit. There. I like it there. That's good. And when I'm done with those areas, then I can just click my retouch or my spot removal tool, and it takes me out of there, takes all those selection areas away, and I can see my image cleanly and what I've done. Now we'll head back over to the tools and have a little discussion about these things. First of all, the next tool that we have is that red eye correction. And like I'd said in class, you guys probably don't need that because you know how to avoid the red eye issue. So we're not even going to talk about that one. And again, it's really self-explanatory. You just click it if you have red eye. And it even tells you drag from the center of the eye or click to use current size. So again, you can make it a different size by using your scroll wheel, and then you would just click and drag. But I haven't got red eye here, so it wouldn't work. All right, then we're going over to the gradient, or sorry, I was going to say the gradient tool, but it's called graduated filter. I'll click that, and I'll actually hit fit on my navigator panel so that we can see the whole thing. So mostly what I would use this tool for is to just make adjustments to about like, you know, a third of the picture or half of the picture or whatever I wanted to do. So what I'm going to do here is take care of that arm that seems to be overexposed a little bit and darken down this side of the image a bit. So I've got the tool selected. This looks a lot like our basic panel, which is down here, so don't get confused. This just has a lot of the same adjustments in it, but you are within that graduated filter tool right now. You do have some preset options here that you can choose from, and I've made a few of my own here, which we're going to do next. But I just want to show you if you just want to go ahead and start doing something without using a preset, you can do that as well. So my exposure right now is set at plus 0.25. I'm going to bring it down, and I'm going to just bring it down a whole bunch so that I can see what I'm doing. And I'm going to hold my shift key so that it will keep my filter straight instead of going in at an angle. And just start outside the image and drag, click and drag across. Ooh, slow, slow, slow because of the recording. Okay, so come on, come on, come on. Drag it till I get that feather across her arm. Wow, this is painful watching paint dry here. Good, okay, I think it's done. Now, it's good for her arm, kind of. It's a little bit dark, but it's way too dark over here. So what I'm going to do now is, because it's still active and I can tell it's active because I've got the gray dot with the black dot in the center, I'm going to go over to the exposure and just bring it up until I actually like this part of the image here in respect to the rest of it. So it's a little bit too dark still. Whoops, I'm going to go the wrong way. There, about there. Now, it's not too bad for the arm, but it's not that great. So I think I just need a little more fill there. So I'm just going to take and drag that circle. And it's dragging it across her arm. But if you notice, it's also affecting her face. And I don't want to do that. So I'm going to bring it back, leave it about there. And then I can adjust the feather. So I'll take that line and drag it back this way. and just make the edge a little harsher. You can see that that line is getting closer to my circle that was in the middle. And then when I drag the circle across, it's going to keep those lines proportionate to what I had, and it's not going to hit her face as much. So see where I can stop right there. Then I can increase the exposure just a hair. Whoops. Whoops, not increase it, darken it. And that's a little too dark. Right about there is good. Okay, now that looks pretty good for the left-hand side. Again, I'm still not all that happy with her arm, so I'm going to get out of that graduated filter by clicking the tool itself and committing the changes. And then I'm going to go to my brush tool, which is again another really handy tool. I'm going to go here and I'm going to leave the exposure where it is again. And that's the only adjustment this brush is going to make, as you can see by my zeros down the right hand side. Make my brush a little bit bigger. And my feather's right up at 100, flow's 100, and size, well, I can see that on the screen, but I can adjust it by my scroll wheel on my mouse if I want to anyway. So I'm going to just now brush over her arm, and like I said, it's way, way, way too much, but at least I can see where it's going. And then just bring the exposure back. And I like it about, well, that might be a little bit too dark. I'm going to bring it up just a hair. About there, that's good. And I can, again, see how that looks, my before and after, by just hitting that switch. There's before, there's after. Now, you can see at the edge that I've overlapped a little bit. That's okay. I'm going to hold down my Alt key, and you can see that that plus sign in the middle of my brush, when I hit the Alt key, turns into a minus sign, which means erase. So I'm going to actually make my brush a little bit smaller, so it gives me a harder edge, and just erase away the areas I don't want. Now, it's hard to tell what I'm doing there, so I can hit the shortcut. I haven't got that checkbox up here that I showed you last night, so I'm just going to hit my shortcut O to bring on the mask selection, and it will show me, there we go. Again, it was slow because of the recording, but it's showing me where I brushed it. Wow, you can see I really went out, but then my eraser was even worse. So I'm just going to go, whoops, I want that erase tool again. Make it a little bit bigger, and just erase away all the stuff I don't want affected by that adjustment. Go in here too. Okay, so I just went ahead and paused until it was done doing what it was doing because it was taking too long, but you get the idea. So I erased away what I didn't want and darkened her arm down a little bit more. And like I said, this is the active area, and you can see by hovering over it where I brushed. So that is what I'm affecting by moving this slider now. And I'm going to leave it right about there. It might be a little bit dark, but I'm not worried about it. We're going to leave it there. Now, and I'm going to get out of it by hitting that brush tool again. Now, the other thing I wanted to show you was the retouching of the eyes. So, enhancing the iris, whitening the eyes, and getting rid of any road maps in the eyes. So, I've come over to this close-up of Lindsay's face, and this is the finished image, which actually needs a little retouch right here now that I'm looking at it. And gotta crank up the opacity because it didn't really take care of it that much. And there, that's pretty good. Okay, I'm gonna leave it there for now. Anyway, what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna take a snapshot because this is the finished image and I like it, but now I want to back up so I can show you some things. So you can see I already have one snapshot here. I'm going to make another one just so you can see how it's done. This is where I want the image to stay in my snapshot, so I'm going to go over to the snapshot panel and hit the plus sign and just give it a name. So I'm going to say Lindsay Finished Facial Retouch. Sounds good. And hit the create button. So now I've got that I can always come back to regardless. Okay, and I'm going to come right back to the beginning here where I did the exposure just so that the eye is still the way it originally was because I want to show you how to do the iris and the whites. So, going to grab the brush tool, and I had already made a couple of brushes here. So I'm going to click that one that I called My Studio Eyes Iris Enhancement, just to show you the adjustments that I had made. So I increased the exposure, I increased the contrast, the highlights, the shadows, brought them down a little bit. Clarity, I increased that, saturations. There wasn't a whole lot of stuff I didn't touch here. But when I use this brush, I can just choose that preset and just brush it over her eye, and it's done. And then I can hold down my space bar and move over to the other eye, and it moves really slowly, and brush it over this eye, and done. That is it. And if I want to see the before and after of that, I can just click that switch. There is before, there's after, and I don't think I got all of that. No, I didn't. It's just because I'm recording, it's having an issue here. Anyway, there we go, and it's done. But I'm going to back that up. And I'm going to go right back to the exposure. So let's just say, okay, I chose another preset here. Let's go to the Dodge Lighten. All it has is an increase of 0.25 on the exposure. I want a little bit more than that, so I'm just going to go like this for now, crank it up to 1.15, and just brush it over the iris so I can see where it's going and what it's affecting. Well, now, obviously, unless I really wanted to funkify her eyes, that's a word I hope you know, I wouldn't leave it there. So I brushed it to see where it was going, and I'm going to just bring it back. Now, originally, that's 0, so that's where it was, so I'm just going to pick it up a bit. And then I can go in, and because I have laid down that brush, I can go and change any of the other settings as well. So I increase the contrast a bit. I want the highlights to come up a bit because I want those light areas of her eye to really pop out. I'm going to bring the shadows down for a little bit of contrast. And the clarity is what's going to give it, oh yeah, a little bit of contrast there. Saturation, I want to make her eyes a little more blue. And let's add some sharpness just for fun. Okay, so there, that's all good. And then I look at that and I go, wow, I really like that. I want to keep that for future use because whenever I do someone's eye, I'm going to use those same settings. So what I'm going to do is go up to the area where it says custom now, because I've changed that, that preset that we had originally used called Dodge Lighten. And I'm going to click the arrows beside it and go down to Save Current Settings as New Preset. And I can give it a name. So that's where I'm going to call it, I'm going to give it NC for Niagara College, and then say Eyes. And I'm going to call it Iris Enhancement because I'm going to make one for the Iris Enhancement, and I'm going to make one for whitening the eyes. So I'm going to hit Create. So there we go. There's our new preset that we've created and named. Now I want to go whiten the eyes a little bit. Not too much, because if you do this too much, it just looks really freaky and it looks bad. So I'm going to go New up here. And then I'm going to choose something just for a starting point. Let's just go, I don't know, highlights for whatever reason. It doesn't matter what you choose there because it's the settings that matter. So what this particular preset is doing is increasing the highlights by 25. I don't want to do that, so I'm just going to double click on the word highlights. It brings my slider back to 0. What I actually want to do with the whites of the eyes is I'm going to increase the exposure a little bit, but I'm also going to take the saturation down. So I'm going to, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to crank that right down to nothing right now. And my exposure I'm going to crank up. And again, I'm going to paint it in so I can see where it's going. Now the other way to do that, of course, is to turn on that mask indicator. But I'm not going to do that because it seems to be kind of slow with my computer because I'm recording. Okay. So there's where it is. Now that, as you can see over here in the navigator, is way too much and really freaky. And you can tell that by looking at it here as well. So I'm going to bring the exposure down now. And I'm going to bring it back to 0. And then increase it. About there. That's pretty good. Now, because we have the saturation down, everything looks kind of gray. that's probably, it works for her eyes, but it's not going to work for everybody. And if you overlap anything like the skin here and that sort of stuff, it's going to look, well, less than good. So I'm going to bring that saturation back up a little. Well, I'm going to bring it back up to 0 and then bring it down a bit just to take care of if there's any maybe yellowing of the whites of the eyes and that sort of thing. But what I can see though when I hover over this, I overlapped her waterline here a little bit, but I'm not too worried about that. I'm going to leave it for the sake of the video here. And I'm going to leave it at that. Now I want to save this because I've taken the saturation down and I've increased the exposure. It's a pretty good setting for the whites of anybody's eyes. So I'm going to save it again. So I'm hitting the arrow and I'm going to say save current settings as new preset. And I'm going to call it again NC for Niagara College, and I'm going to call it eyes again, and then in brackets this time I'm going to say whiten eyes. And hit create. Okay, so I've saved that one. Now I want to get rid of those road maps. So I'm going to again, oh actually I don't want to hit new, I want to go back to my spot removal tool for this particular issue. And I'm going to make sure my opacity is 100%, feather is 100, and size, again, I can control by my mouse wheel. So I'm just going to make my circle a little bit bigger than that first line. And I'm going to click and just drag over top of it before I hit her eyelash there. Ooh, good job. Now I'm going to come over here and do this little one there. And there. That's pretty good. I'm going to deselect the spot removal tool by clicking the tool once more. And I'm going to go back to before I did that. So I'm going to just do that in my history panel. And you can see the lines there. And there they're gone, and that's pretty good. Now I could take some more time, make it really perfect, but that is good for now. You get the idea. Now because I had saved that preset for the whites of the eyes, I can zoom into this eye, and I can go to my adjustment brush, and oh, it's already there because that's the last one I chose. So my NC eyes, whiten eyes, I can go and brush it over the whites of her eyes. And enhance. Now that's not actually, I think that looks pretty good. Let's have a look. Yeah, I was going to bring it down a little bit, but now that I'm looking at this one over here, that might be a little too bright. So I'm going to activate that last white eyes adjustment that I did by clicking on the dot, and I'm going to bring the exposure back down a little bit, just a little bit too much. And again, get out of it by clicking on the brush tool. There, that's pretty good. So there is the original image. Well, there's the original image with the exposure adjustment, and then there's the final version. Now I'm going to show you that snapshot of what I had done completely. And you can see with it all finished, with the hair gone and everything else, how it can look. Now what I'd like to show you is how to create a preset for a set of adjustments that we've done to any particular image. So let's just go to this image here. And I'm going to make some adjustments to it just really quick. I'm going to bring up the clarity. I'm going to adjust the exposure a bit. Right about there is good. And what else do I want to do? Ooh, let's do the vibrance just for fun. And then we'll go down and I'll create that split toning. So this is how you do that split toning effect I did in class last night. For the highlights, I'm going to click on the box beside and simply choose that yellow box up here with the eyedropper. And then I'm going to go to this box down here, which is whoops, sorry, is for the shadows. So I'm going to click on that box and click on the blue. And there you've got kind of an instant vintage look. Now, let's leave it at that, other than I'm also going to just add an adjustment brush just to kind of prove a point here for something. Let's do exposure. Actually, let's crank it so that we'll go the other way. Just so you're going to see my point here. So there, I'm going to darken her face. Great picture, huh? Okay, now I am going to click out of that brush just to finish it off. And then I'm going to take a graduated filter and I'm just going to drag across the image here. Okay. Okay, so let's say I'm happy with that, and I want to now create my preset. We're happy with the black face here. All right, so we're going to go over to the preset panel, and we have something called user presets here, which is right now empty because we haven't recorded any yet, or I hadn't recorded any in this catalog yet anyway. So I'm going to hit my plus sign, and that brings up our dialog box for creating the preset, where you can give it a name. So I'm going to call it Vintage. Let's just call it Vintage Look. That sounds good. Now, I want it to go into the user presets. But remember what I was saying last night is that I can create a bunch of different sets of presets, and some of them can affect the whole image, some of them can just affect the vignette, or some of them can be just graduated filter adjustments, that sort of thing. So I'm going to leave that up to you as to, how you want to organize your presets. But so for now, I'm just going to call this Vintage Look. And I think I'm just going to type after it whole image just so that I know that's what it is. Now, everything is unchecked except for the white balance because that is how I had last used it. So I'm going to actually check all because it is a whole image adjustment that I want it to make. And I'm going to leave everything checked except for the lens corrections, which I'm going to remove because I want to create a bunch of presets later on for vignettes. And that, if I left it checked but didn't do any vignette on this image, it would overwrite the vignette on the image I might use this preset on later on down the road and would wipe out the vignette that I had already possibly created on there. So I don't really want to do that. That's why you really need to think ahead of time on how you want to organize your presets into, the vignettes or the whole image and that sort of thing. So there's also vignetting in that effects panel, so I'm going to take that off as well. Everything else I'm going to leave because it does affect the whole image. And that graduated filters is checked. So it's going to put this on there as well. I'm going to say, kind of make up a scenario here and say, I don't want to copy this over to the next image because it's probably something I just did to this image because it was too light on the one side or something like that. So anyway, I'm just going to uncheck that graduated filters box and then hit create. Okay, so now as you also noticed in there that there was nothing for to copy over the adjustment brush, which is good because the adjustment brush is really very specific to an image because as you can see, I would not want to take this to the next image. And actually, I got to get rid of that because it's driving me crazy. I'm just going to select it and hit delete. There we go. And then get out of the tool by clicking the brush. Now, here's something else I can use with this image. I had created the whole image preset, which is going to adjust the clarity and all the rest. But let's say I wanted to create a preset just for that split toning here. So I'm going to hit the plus sign again. I'm going to check none, and I will give the name split tone vintage. And I would probably name all of my split toning adjustments. Like I was saying, purple and orange is also a good combination for split toning, and there was another one too which escapes me at the moment, but anyway, I might call them all split tone and then give them whatever name after that. Then I'll know that all that this does is split tone. So I'm just going to highlight the split toning box and make sure that process version and calibration is checked and then hit create. I'm also going to do one more and just show you how, how you can do this. So I'm going to go to the lens corrections panel, and I'm going to go to the lens vignetting. And the other thing I'm going to do actually is get rid of that graduated filter, because again, it's driving me crazy. So I'm going to activate it by clicking on the dot and hit delete. Now we can see our vignette a little better. So The vignette is good. I might do that. I kind of like the harder edge on that just because of the image. I like that dark, dark edge there. So I'm going to leave it. And I'm going to create a preset just from that vignette. So hit the plus sign, and I'm going to call this hard-edged, well actually, we'll call it vignette because that's what my series will be called. And I'm going to call it hard-edged lens correction, so I know where it came from, because remember we have the lens correction vignette and then we have the effects vignette, and the effects vignette is more for images that have been cropped. So keep that in mind when you're creating your presets as well. But now I'm going to again check none, but make sure the process version and the calibration is checked, and then go to that lens vignetting and just check that box. That's all it's going to duplicate from this image and carry to the next one. So we'll hit create. So I've got those 3 presets that I've created. I'm going to just show you really quick how it's going to work. So I'll go to another one and let's check that one. And I'm going to make a couple of adjustments here just to show that actually we'll use the preset to do it. So here is my vintage look whole image, and you can see when I hover over that my image up here changes to show me what it's going to look like. If I scroll over the vignette, it shows me what it's going to look like in the split tone only. It shows me what it's going to look like. So I'm going to use that vintage look whole image preset. So I've got the image up here. All I have to do is click that in the preset, and there you go. Now let's say I want to add that vignette. I'll just go and hit the vignette, and it doesn't adjust anything else that I've done with that vignette preset. It only added the vignette, and that's it. So wow, that was a whole lot of stuff, but I think we're done for today. If there's anything I've missed, let me know and I'll add it in somewhere. Anyway, just remember to bring your cameras next class. We're going to be shooting with the studio lights and learning some stuff there about lighting. And that's it. So have a good week, and we'll talk to you soon, guys.